questions that I sent you the questions. So
yes.
I'm curious if there was anything that you sort of felt particularly drawn to, or that you thought was sort of a curious question.
I thought they were excellent, interesting questions.
Thank you.
I was drawn to the first question. Is it something like, does writing help ease the agony of life or something?
The official question, and this is one that I think I've asked almost everyone I've interviewed so far. Like, it's one that's made it in, so I think it's a keeper. I think it's like a common feeling. But the question is, does writing make the anguish of living more bearable?
Yes, I like that question because I definitely think it does in a couple of ways. One is that people often say everything is material. In other words, everything that happens to you is material for your writing, which is very comforting when what's happening to you is uncomfortable or unpleasant or sad. I often comfort myself with the idea that, well, it might be useful someday later when I'm over it. You never know. And even when you're bored, like sitting in the doctor's office and being kept waiting, if you look around at the office and look at the people in the office, it can be a way of entertaining yourself. Maybe someday you'll have to write a doctor's office scene or something. Then the other way that I think it eases the anguish of living is when you sit down to write, a lot of times you don't know what's going to come out. Things come out that you don't know were inside you. It's sort of, when it's going well, it's like a form of play with your spirit or your soul, and things are coming out and it surprises you and it helps you work through things and just makes everything more interesting.
Can you think of, or is there something that you know that you've written that's been surprising to you, or that's sort of come out of that, either that play or like that sort of unknown spirit thing?
I think everything that is at all successful that I've written has a lot of moments like that. Because I try to sit down and get into that space in my head where I'm not thinking consciously or trying to make the story advance. I'm trying to let it go where it wants to go, which I can't always do. But then when I do that, things do come out, but it's not going to sound very profound. If I tell you, for some reason, the moment that occurs to me right now is in the last book that I wrote, which is for children ages 8 to 12, called The Only Girl in School. It's about this girl who's the only girl in her school. And there's a character in it named Yucky Gilbert, who's based on a tormentor of my sister's from elementary school, who was in love with her and always chasing her and trying to kiss her. And there's a scene where she goes to a square dance and nobody's there. The girl does. And then suddenly, because all the boys have refused to go, and then suddenly Yucky Gilbert bursts in and he's got a handcuff cuffed to one of his hands. And I didn't plan this. The whole time I was writing the scene, I felt like, oh, this is so labored, it's not going well, it's terrible. But later when I read it, I don't know where this idea, like he just comes in, for some reason I saw him having a handcuff cuffed to one of his hands. And it turned out that the other boys tried to keep him from coming to the dance by handcuffing him to his kitchen table with toy handcuffs. And it sounds ridiculous, like that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about real spirit, but it's still, it's fun, it's surprising, little details, they just come up. I don't know where that came from, but it turns out to make that scene work. Without it, the scene is kind of labored and dead, but it comes alive when he comes in and panting, having done whatever he could to uncuff himself so he could be at the dance with this girl who doesn't like him.
Is there something you do then, like in your process when you're sitting down to write, to try to access that space, or do you think do you sort of think in that way all the time, or you're kind of letting things in, or opening yourself to those surprising moments in your life so that you can sort of call them up later? Or what do you think? I don't know, I'm interested in the fact that you said it was sort of like your spirit or your soul, that's where all that stuff is coming from.
Well, that example might not be a good example of spirit or soul. It's just a little detail, but I guess How to Say Goodbye in Robot, which was my first young adult novel, which was one of the most personal books that I wrote because it's set in Baltimore, where I grew up. It's set at a school that's similar to my school. That has scenes that are sort of like audio scenes, like a play, that are a radio show, that are based on a radio show that my brother used to listen to, and he would record them and send me tapes of it. It was a local Baltimore radio show. Just these crazy eccentrics calling up and talking about whatever. And a lot of the stuff in that book did feel like when I could let it loose, it was like just pieces of my past coming out, reforming, and becoming something else, and sparking. But how I do that, I don't know, because when I can't do it, I want to do it, and I don't know how to make myself do it.
So what's the anguish then? What's the anguish that you're sort of writing away from or using in your writing? Or like, what are the hard parts?
There are a lot of hard parts, but one thing that I thought when I was considering that question is that writers are always saying, oh, it's such torture, it's terrible, it feels horrible to write. But I wonder, how would we feel if we weren't writing? Maybe we would have even more anguish, because it is a way of working through things. But the anguish of writing is, as most people probably have said, just sitting there and trying to do it and feeling like it isn't working. It feels horrible. It's so labored, and most writers probably do this. I don't know if you do this, but it becomes part of your identity. And so it's important to you that you feel like you can do it somewhat. And so when it's not going well, it's like part of you is a big failure, or you're not worth anything. I know it's not really true. But it feels to me, I think I do use writing as a way to say I'm justifying my existence on this planet. And I know, like, a therapist would yell at me for feeling that way, but that's how I feel.
Are there periods where you don't write? Like, if you finish a book, do you take a week off or a month off? Or do you have to always be writing, or do you let yourself take some time off? And then how is that, if you do take time off, how is that time off? Is it good? Is it sort of refreshing? Is it healing? And if you don't take that time off, why?
Yeah, I do take time off. It depends on how hard I'm working. If I am working very hard and then I finish something and turn it in to my agent or to my editor, I will take a break of a week or 2 weeks or a month sometimes, depending on how long I have. Because if they read it right away and get it back to me in 2 weeks, then I take off 2 weeks. But if there's more time, let's say they sit on it for 4 months, I won't not write for 4 months. Like, after about a month, I start to get itchy. At first, the first week feels weird, like, wait, I should be writing. I have to go sit down. I don't know what to do. And then it feels good. And then it feels uncomfortable. And then itchy. And then I have to start again. But I do take some breaks. I don't write every single day.